Kızarla zaten.
Hello. What's it? Yeah. Can't you make way for the bishop, please? What? That's all right.
I mean, what, glad to be back home.
Yeah, that's very good. Please, can't you make way for the bishop? Please, please, just make way for the bishop. Please make way for the bishop, please.
Yes, we will have a press conference.
Please. Yes, the bishop will have a press conference later. Please make way for him.
Let us say at 3:30 at St.
At 3:30 at Rosettenville.
St.
Benedict's.
St. Benedict's. Yeah.
All right, at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right,
Now
let the bishop go through. Please, please.
Okay.
Please make way.
Thank you.
Please make way.
You think they're going to
Please make way. Please make way.
Hi, how are you, John?
Very well.
Hi, Marvin.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. Yes.
David, where are we going now?
Let's go to Bishop's house first, in town here.
Bishop's house? Yes, because I think that I'd like to talk to you. So we don't go to Bishop's house. Desmond, you going to Bishop's house then?
Yes, these guys will be troublesome.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I'll speak to David.
John, please, listen. Hello, hello. No, John.
John is coming.
John coming here, yes.
to put you in the picture of the lady.
The freedoms of several cities. I was made an honorary citizen of Baltimore and of the state of Maryland. I was accompanied on many of the visits to the various cities by their mayors in Washington, in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in Atlanta. It is interesting to note that not a single South African university has yet thought us fit to get their honorary degree, and the world is surprised. I am not asking them to do so, but it just is one of those glaring contrasts about perceptions of Bishop Tutu. In my own sea city, Johannesburg, hardly any white-run organization, apart from the Black Sash, so far as I can remember, congratulated me on the Nobel Peace Prize, nor welcomed me as Bishop of Johannesburg. I have still to hear from the mayor of Johannesburg welcoming me or congratulating me, and the world wonders. My contact with the traffic police in my sea city was when they towed away my car from near the cathedral, when I was parked in a restricted area as I rushed to a service. And even when I explained this afterwards, I still paid a 100 rand fine, and the world wonders. Several very important persons, as the world seems to regard this, sought to be with us in the USA, apart from the mayors of the cities I visited and various politicians. The Vice President of the United States, knowing I was going to Atlanta, asked whether he could meet with me there. I didn't seek out an interview with any one of the Reagan administration people. He did. And when I said it was going to be difficult to do so, after the church service, his chief of staff still came and said, could you have a few moments with our vice president? I saw the United Nations Secretary General and various other leaders, Ted Kennedy, Jesse Jackson, Gary Hart, and I had two very large meetings with leaders in the entertainment world, Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, Pat Boone, Diana Ross, who came to a meeting in Los Angeles, and Bill Cosby and Mrs. King met us at the Atlanta airport at 2 in the morning. And the second meeting with entertainers was our last meeting in Sacramento, when Jane Fonda and her husband, Tom Hayden, arranged a huge meeting in their house. And people came from all over. I mean, people flew in from New York to be at that meeting. The stars of The Color Purple, the stars of Sun City, Richard Pryor, and people of that kind. Stevie Wonder sent a taped message, and we even met with Muhammad Ali. And I was entertained by Jewish leaders and was given a very beautiful gift by them. It's a picture of me with sort of an embossment of the statue that commemorates the Holocaust. Best public relations officers. As a result of the statement that he made about phonies, I received the freedom letter signed by over 1 million Americans repudiating him. And I received this from the leaders and had a private meeting with the CEO of General Motors and Barros. There's no doubt at all we had very good coverage in the United States. The fundraising has also been successful beyond our wildest dreams. We have had donations or pledges amounting to over $500,000 US. And this excludes scholarships and donations to the Bishop Tutu Southern Africa Refugee Scholarship Fund, which I founded over $200,000 US plus cash donations of 50,000. So that in total we will have collected very nearly $1 million. Now, failed to raise funds, those same newspapers would have been gloating. Now, because they suffer from such an extraordinary degree of sour grapeism, they have to find nasty things to say. The money I will share with the South African Council of Churches in its emergency fund to help with the families of political prisoners and detainees for legal fees and things of that kind. The body of our Lord Jesus Christ. And when one part suffers, so they say, all suffer together. And it is interesting that, virtually all of the money has come from to suffer by the fact that there might be those who were going to be wanting to boycott. And I want to point out, that there are very, very many of my flock, white, who have been most supportive. And I think it is mischievous in the extreme for newspapers to seek to be exacerbating racial tensions when we seek to be working together as a family. And most of the money that it will be paid to help to pay our priests higher stipends. But what I will do with all the money that comes from this diocese, that we are a diocese that is capable of being of assistance in other parts. And I'm sure that this is something that we will be able to accomplish. I have not sought any of this status out that I have referred to, and I do intend to use it. The thing I have done or said in my recent trip. What supreme irony. The world keeps honoring us, I don't know why, and welcomes our ministry in South Africa as being to work for justice and peace and reconciliation. One of the awards that I got is the Martin Luther King Peace Award. You don't give that to people who are advocates of violence or anything of this kind, and for people who are fomenters of trouble. We seek to work for justice and peace and reconciliation. And yet in our home country, the government and most of its white supporters regard us as the devil incarnate. And its lick-spittle sycophants in the press and radio and television go to extreme lengths to vilify and discredit us. They will hardly have reported the rousing welcomes and standing ovations we have received everywhere we have been in the United States. And I want to underline, I am ashamed of absolutely nothing that I have done or said. I stand by it. Because I have said hardly anything in the United States that I have not said here. The government and its supporters need to show whether I am lying when I say apartheid is as evil, as immoral, as unchristian as Nazism? Am I lying when I say this is the only country I know where it is a crime for a national to work, to look for work, if their pass is not in order? That it is the only country I know in the world where it is a crime for a man to sleep with his wife if he is a migrant worker and she should come and join him in town. Is it a lie that I am a Nobel Peace Prize winner? I am the bishop of one of the largest dioceses in our church in South Africa. I'm 54 years of age, that I do not vote in my country because I cannot vote, and yet an 18-year-old, because he or she is white and more recently so-called colored and Indian, can vote. Am I lying when I say children die by deliberate government policy, that they are dumped in places where the government knows there is no food, that children starve in this country because there is no, that they starve not because there is no food? Am I lying? Why don't they point out that I am lying? Am I lying when I say 14-year-olds have been in detention for 5 months? Am I lying when I say a 4-year-old is killed with a police bullet, rubber bullet, and the inquest claims that no one is to blame for that death, when only the police carry rubber bullets? I mean, the government and its supporters have got heaps and heaps of ground to discredit me. Have not this government people among them, including the state president, who supported the Nazi cause? Am I lying? Why don't they point out that that is not true? And if I have contravened any law, why? I mean, they have all that draconian security legislation under which I can be arraigned. Why are there threats about passport withdrawals? That kind of thing happens only in totalitarian countries. Like Wallace can't travel because his government is scared of what he is likely to say. I thought they said this country claims to be a democracy. Nowhere else in the West would one be subject to the arbitrary action of having a passport withdrawn, because those countries hold freedom of speech in high regard. But I told this government long ago, I am not afraid of them. They are not God, and they ought to know that. They may be able to deal with me and get rid of me, but that is not going to stop God's purpose for this country. I said so before the Elof Commission, which they had hoped was going to discredit us, and the government ended with a lot of egg on its face. I will do and say what I believe is consistent with the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. And my ultimate loyalty is not to man or any human authority. It is to Jesus Christ. I wish those kowtowing, servile newspapers and TV and radios would try to prepare white South Africans for what is inevitable. We're not going to have a country that is run by a minority forever. And they would do this country an enormous service if they were able to say to white people, this is what you ought to be preparing yourself for. A country where we will have a true democracy. I have said before, and I can't understand, why there should be so much of a hoo-ha. I've said before, long ago, and I said it even in the Supreme Court on one occasion, that I support the ANC in its objectives for working for a non-racial, democratic, and just society. And I have said I have not supported its methods. And those of you who have been to press conferences that I have given over several years will know that that is what I have kept saying. And I have said many times, I mean, it's a jingle almost, that I reject all violence as evil. And I have said I reject the violence of a repressive system and the violence of those who seek to overthrow it. In fact, I hold the conservative position in the church. The church's teaching is that there can come a time when it will be justifiable to overthrow an unjust government by violence. That's not my position. It's a position that the church has taught through its doctrine of the just war. Otherwise, I mean, there would have been no justification for Christians to fight against Hitler and his Nazism. And I need to underline, when people talk about violence in this country, they almost always suggest that violence is something that is going to be coming from outside for the first time. I have said before, and I will say again now, that the primary violence and terrorism in South Africa comes from apartheid and its supporters. And our people have been peace-loving to a fault. Why is it right for Afrikaners to have fought